you feeling yesterday morning, Sam?
Yesterday morning, I was so hungover that I had to retreat to a gorgeous York cafe where they were playing the audiobooks from Harry Potter 5 and slowly had to apply my gag reflex due to how much I had drank the night before. Because I tried to not drink before gigs for quite a long time to, get my voice back in the swing of things. And so a low tolerance for alcohol added to a late finish, added to a short amount of time to get drunk in, and some poor decisions about bedtimes led to a severe hangover. But it was accompanied by the soft pillow of a job well done. I like to think, anyway, maybe I'm just telling myself that, but I didn't feel too morally. I don't think I made any bad decisions except for time I went to sleep otherwise, so I was pretty chuffed.
What time we're talking? How early when it comes to the early hours of the morning?
Yeah, I'm not sure on the exact time. All I was told is I fell asleep into a glass of Aspals, which is, as middle class as you can imagine. At a friend's house as well, because obviously the pubs close at 12 latest at the moment. So yeah, I fell asleep into a glass of some alcohol at some point and woke up with having broken. So I bought a cowboy outfit for our gig at the Minster. And nice. I bought this bolo tie, which is one of those cowboy things. And I've just... I thought I'd fixed it again. But no, yeah, I've accidentally broken it because of my accident involving an Aspals glass.
Weren't you in Fairy Wings the last time you played before this when you were in York?
Yeah. Well, it's always... I was told that I was not allowed to have any angelic costume on because it may offend the canon at the Minster. It may offend the Archbishop could storm onto our gig, smack me, call me Judas, lay me out, and then sing the rest of the set himself. And I wasn't having that, so I just wasn't allowed to dress up as an angel for this particular gig. Which I was.
So you thought you'd go cowboy?
I decided to go cowboy. It's like, what? There's nothing in the Bible about cowboys, or if there is, then I'm missing the exciting chapters. So I decided to go as a cowboy. And yeah, people seemed to dig it. It got the big thumbs up from God. It came in through the top of the ceiling at the end of the gig. With the big,
you looked over to the stained glass window and Jesus had raised his left hand.
Yeah, he was doing that. He was doing the devil horns, which was ironic, I guess, but he really enjoyed it. He's really into it.
And he was fully clad in kiss makeup.
Again, I'd read this version of the Bible. Man, that sounds good.
It's all in the Book of Revelations, man.
Yeah, exactly. Book of rock relations.
Do you ever take any inspiration lyrically from kind of holy imagery, like Leonard Cohen and stuff? He was pretty big into his stuff.
That it's definitely something that, because you're right. Dylan and Cohen and people like that, and Tom Waits and stuff have such a great basis in scripture, and it's something that I've always wanted to look into, but I'm so thick and badly read in terms of the Bible that I'd only be referencing those people's songs. It never really interested me. The older I get, the more it interests me, and the sort of the scope of some of those stories and things like that is amazing. But I think I'm more interested in the sort of folk music and lyrical music traditions that go hand in hand with biblical imagery. So stuff like Samson and Delilah. I've always been obsessed with Samson because it's close to my name, but that story is really cool. And I almost forget that's in the Bible because I think I was more interested in Greek and Roman myths when I was a teenager. I think there's some really good stories there. Absolutely bonkers as well. They really didn't hold anything back. Not that they did in the Bible, of course, but the Greek and Roman myths, there's a lot of songs there that haven't been written. I don't know how well it's getting.
A lot of incest and shit in Greek.
Oh, and turning your kids into a swan because they stepped on your dog's tail and stuff like that. It's just brilliant. I mean, obviously you get your fair share of weird shit in the Bible, but man, the Greeks did not hold back.
Well, it's like Cronus eating his kids and stuff.
Oh, yeah, it's good shit.
Or was that Zeus? Or the same?
Jupiter and Zeus. What did Cronus do?
I think is Cronus maybe the Roman version of Zeus?
That's Jupiter.
Zeus is the Greek one.
That's okay. Yeah, that's Jupiter, the big daddy. But I think Cronus might have been one of his sons or something. Or maybe, where am I getting that from? What's Cronus in? I watched a Disney film with him in it recently.
I don't know. It's a Guillermo del Toro film as well, isn't it?
Yeah, no, you're right. Once again, the fact that I'm basing my religious and scriptural knowledge off of Disney films and Bob Dylan lyrics shows how unequipped I am to be able to write anything decent about it. We'll try it one day. We'll just do sort of like a, what have I heard through the grapevine about this particular biblical character, and see if I can write an album about it. But until then, I might have to hold off.
When you say you're kind of getting drawn towards those stories a little bit more as you get older too, is that just from a storytelling point of view, or is there more of an interest in faith blossoming too?
Not faith in a particularly religious or spiritual level, but I think it's just, the storytelling, the narratives of those stories is so good. And especially when you see how they inspired stuff like Tolkien, The Lord of the Rings, and how they even inspired, like, the atheistic works. I'm a big fan of Philip Pullman, and he did his Dark Materials trilogy, and it's just like the scope of those things, and he's borrowing a lot from religious imagery and putting it into his work. And because those themes are usually so vast, they're in so much stuff, like even stuff like duality of God and the devil is essentially all duality within fiction itself. It's just, this is one of the oldest examples of it, and I think there's so much that can be drawn from that really basic storytelling that plays so much of a part in just Western art, I think, right? Like, we'll always see depictions of snakes and apples and lightning and thunder and grass and earth and animals and things like that, because, obviously they're universal concepts, but they were put in a particular way. It was really interesting, actually, like having a bit of an oddly transcendent experience standing at the back of the Minster looking at, I think it's called the Great West Window, and it essentially shows the story of creation until Judgment Day, but all in these incredible glass paneling. And it's bonkers just remembering all of the shit I forgot at Sunday school through not listening and messing around and stuff. But these things are ingrained into our public consciousness as a version of storytelling, especially from a Western perspective. And it was nice seeing it in that, being reminded of it in a much more beautiful setting, and not being forced to go on like a National Trust Heritage Day by my parents or school definitely made me appreciate it in a different way, It's
like a lot of things when it comes to learning, isn't it? When you come to it on your own and you kind of discover it through exploration, it's a lot easier to become interested in it rather than if you're sat down and told to read the Bible at 7 years old or whatever.
Exactly. No one told me to like it, so this time around I'm getting interested in it. Who knows? Maybe give me a year and I'll be a saint. I'll be a vicar. I'll be so fully involved within Christian teaching that I'll have turned a new leaf. But at the moment, I just like the stories and the pretty pictures.
Did you have a crowd at the show?
Yeah, we had 150 people in the audience.
Wow.
And a 12-piece choir and a 4-piece string section.
Beautiful.
It was bonkers. Well, I think it's going to be out tomorrow to stream, so people could stream it live. But I think tomorrow, Friday, whenever it is, people are going to be able to actually rewatch it as a full film, and I am so glad of that, because it's one of the only things that I think we've ever filmed that I didn't fuck up on. I don't think, unless there's something that I'm missing and I was just caught up in the joy of it, I don't think I fucked up too bad. I think it's like, and there's like a sense of permanence to that. Like, I didn't fuck up too bad. People can keep watching this. I'm so happy.
Is that partly because there is that pressure where you can't refilm it? Like, if you're doing something that's pre-recorded, there's always the tendency where if it really goes wrong, you can go back and change it a little bit. Whereas if you're streaming live, there's no safety net. Exactly.
And the fact that we hadn't played it to an audience in 7.5 months, and that it's York Minster. It's one of the reasons I moved to York when I was 18 is because I saw that building and thought it was one of the most amazing things I'd ever seen. And it's like undeniably beautiful. And the fact that we got to play, a rock gig in it was super cool. But it's exactly that. It's the fact that you're only in there for one day, one evening, and then it's done, and you sort of have to get it right. It's not like the stained glass windows that they can take 200 years to make. We've got to get something right in about 3 hours, and then get it done. So I'm really glad that everything went well. I remembered the words. I didn't say anything really stupid. I don't think I did any swear words on the air. Overall, I'm pretty chuffed with that. Those were my main 3 boxes that I needed to tick. I think I did.
Not even any swear words in the songs. Are there swear words in the songs, actually?
I don't know if there are. There was a song I was worried about playing called a Hotel Song, which is talking about, which I guess just questioning one's relationship with spiritual beings when you feel so desolately alone that you don't feel like there's anyone else in the world. I was a bit worried about, the canon who had just introduced this sort of cottoning on to the existential lyrics and, just turning down my microphone and saying, no, he's big up to God. You're still in our thoughts and prayers and stuff like that. But luckily he didn't interrupt. There were no interruptions, and I don't think any swear words. I'll have to think about that. I don't think I put any swear words in any songs yet. I was taught it was weak to swear in a song. So
it's like a Jerry Seinfeld thing, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, well,
it's like a cheap laugh.
It's a cheap laugh, yeah. It's sort of a shock. I'm trying to think of... There really aren't many artists these days that I'm listening to that swear in songs anyway. The National did it, I think, and I quite liked that. I think he just put the word fuck at the end of a verse. I think it was... it worked pretty well. But yeah,
dramatic effect.
Exactly, for dramatic effect, but yeah, I don't know if swearing in songs is that great unless it needs to be involved in the telling of the story. I'm trying to think of another one, but...
It can become a crutch, particularly in hip-hop stuff.
Yeah, it can, but a lot of the time, because hip-hop is so conversational and so narrative-driven, it's almost allowed because it's such a linguistic part of the way that a lot of the people that write hip-hop lyrics are talking and speaking to each other. It's like, why detract from how they talk to each other just to not get the parental advisory sticker on the front, whereas we're just polite young men.
But then a lot of your, or not a lot, but some of your songs do take on a slightly conversational shape, or it's like you're speaking to someone, like Sweet Fading Silver, for example.
Yeah, are there any swear words in that one? No, I don't think there are any. I don't know, but yeah, absolutely. There's some of my favourite lyrics when you can when you literally make it sound like a conversation, when you make it sound like they've been lifted out of a script of someone hovering over your bed or something, and things that you guys are saying to each other, because it can feel so intensely personal, and it's like someone's got a camcorder of a particular moment of conversation. That to me is particularly real. That's a really nice way to summate a situation. If you can get a scene like that summates how you think about something, that's one of the most perfect lyrics, I think.
So it's almost like you having a conversation about a particular experience and just summarizing how you feel about it.
It could be that, or it could be if you take a snapshot of a conversation and the two characters within it are talking about something that happened, or they're reacting about something that's happened, and that manages to capture something about an emotion. It can be a step far away from the conversation enough while still being able to say something. I mean, I'm sounding as sort of vague as I possibly can because I think a lot of the time the best songs are as vague as possible. They sort of blur the edges and you never really know the answer. It's the sort of vague vibe that I'm on about at the moment. If a song raises a question and never really answers it, I think a lot of the best songs do that. I've been getting back into my Bob Dylan and stuff because it was his 80th the other day.
I saw it, yeah.
And yeah, that guy doesn't answer many questions, and I love that.
I can't believe he's still going.
Yeah, man. I saw him a couple of years ago, and I mean, people say going strong. I don't know about strong, but they're still wheeling him out, and I don't know what they're pumping him full of, but that guy is still vertical.
Did he seem fairly lucid when you saw him?
Lucid, yeah, but I saw him at the Royal Albert Hall once. And he didn't acknowledge that there was a crowd there for about 80 minutes until at one point, I think in Spirit on the Water, he sort of faces off to the side like this at a 90 degree angle to the crowd, and he plays the keyboards like that because he's got arthritis. He can't play guitar anymore. He plays like that, and the only bit in the only moment of recognition that he was playing a gig was when he turned about 15 degrees like that to the crowd and then turned back, and people went insane. It was like he like got his 60s voice back or something. It was bonkers. People went absolutely mental, and I thought that was quite touching. The fact that he just didn't say anything either. He just moved himself a 15-degree angle closer to the audience, and people felt like he knew they existed, which I think most people want from him. That's all they want. Did he make the kind of devil sign? Sadly not. He did do a backflip after that, though, and then an animal sacrifice on stage in Kiss
What
makeup.
animal?
In Kiss makeup. Oh, it was just a kid, just a boy.
A child.
Yeah, just a child. Yeah.
I saw you did a beer as well for the York Minster show.
Oh, we did. Yeah, Kirkstall brewery did a beer for us, which was amazing. I've had some. It's delicious. And it sounds like I'm plugging the beer now, but it honestly is amazing. It's really good. It's a vegan, gluten-free IPA, and it's fucking incredible. And Connor, our guitar player, designed the can for it and everything. And it's called Human Contact. It was, we'd always talked about doing a beer because we're big beer drinkers and we wanted to do a cool beer. And we just thought we'd go all out with this gig, really. We were like, we even made a gin, but I don't think anyone bought any. But we were just like, oh, let's just do everything. Let's do a poster. We've done a colouring book. Someone stop us.
I've seen a lot of people doing colouring books.
Yeah, there's an option at all the merch stores now to do colouring books. And if you can be bothered to get, 16 pages together or something, 12 pages together, what's the harm in it? Get some crayons, give yourself a couple of hours, lose yourself, put the record on a couple of times, and lose yourself with some crayons.
I think, yeah. But then you could have like a page for each song and a kind of illustration, especially with Connor's like a visual artist, right?
Yeah.
A graphic designer. Yeah.
That would have been a better idea than what we did, because what
did you do?
Well, Connor is an amazing graphic designer, and so we collated a lot of his ideas that we'd used for artworks over the previous times. But because we had 12 songs and we've got a 12 or 13 song album, we really should have done what you just suggested. But instead, we just sort of spammed various things on different pages in a sort of reckless and unthought of way until finally the product was finished and we could sit down on the sofa again. But there's a lot of weird little drawing. I haven't seen the full product yet. They're going to be going out, I think, in the next couple of days, but I submitted, I think, 78 drawings of my own that I've been doodling over the last 6 or 7 years, so I apologise in advance if anyone is seeing any sort of QAnon signs in any of these things. They're not there on purpose. These are just drawings that I did when I was drunk or bored.
How can you draw when you're drunk?
Badly, it turns out. Just terribly. I mean, there is no, again, lucidity. There's no lucidity to these drawings. Nothing was done intentfully. We'll have to wait and see what comes out. I'm excited to see the colouring book. I just want to own I don't think I've owned a colouring book since I was about 4. So if anything, that's going to be a treat for me.
I got one a few years ago because they were supposed to kind of relax you. One of those kind of adult colouring books that you're supposed to colour in and it's supposed to chill you out.
But when you say adult colouring books, what are we talking?
I think it was landscapes and stuff, but it was supposed to be for adults. It wasn't it was complicated.
Yeah.
That was part of the problem though, because although it was supposed to relax you, I didn't feel relaxed. I just got very kind of uptight and anal about making sure I didn't go out with the lines. Yeah, well, and it would stress me out if it didn't look good.
Absolutely. It's just the way that you stressed the second syllable in adult. I thought it was a very different type of colouring book. And I was wondering how they were going to do that, because there's probably a market for it.
Porn colouring books.
Exactly. Well, hardcore colouring, the Howl the Hum's hardcore colouring books coming to a WH Smith near you soon.
How do you doodle in the same books that you write in? You phased me there for a bit with that.
Not nudes. I don't doodle nudes. There's drawings next to a lot of the lyrics and stuff and things that I'm thinking, because it's different, because you have to sort of. I found recently a little trick to get. So if I sit down and write a song, say you've only got a certain amount of time that you can write before you have to go out, you've got to meet some friends, something like that. You've got to try and stay in the same mindset that you were in when you had that first idea, because that first initial idea is usually the best, the strongest idea. It's the big spark. So if you can draw in a thing to be able to draw from when you come back to that idea, if you can sort of get your head into that state again, that's super useful. You're getting yourself back into the character, into the main idea, into the scenery. If you're adding scenery, I find it a lot easier to get back into the character of the song. And then as a result, it sort of speeds along the process, because it's so hard if you feel like you've got this idea and you come back to it on another day and the magic's gone. You feel like the magic's gone. It's so hard to get back into, to be re-inspired. So if you can, there's little drawings to remind myself of various scenes that I'd rather not pick down the word, because I'd if you can express it through just a doodle or something, it puts you back in the place a little more directly, I think.
Fully back in the place, or kind of just scouting around the outskirts of it? Can you ever truly get back to the headspace of when the initial spark came to you?
Well, yeah, probably not. But then if that's the case, then I always enjoy the the sort of different journey that it's taken me on. The next route, the wrong turns are usually interesting and useful.
You love a road metaphor.
Truly. I need to stop writing about fucking cars, man.
I saw today, I was looking back through some of your stuff, and you did a post when, I think it was when Sweet Fading Silver came out, maybe, where you spoke about very in depth the location in which the Fiat Punto breaks down. And you had a very kind of like few good paragraphs, description about that place, going into incredible detail.
Yeah.
Is that something you can do for every song? Do you kind of have that level of understanding for it?
It depends on the song. Not every single song, no, but that one is one that I think of. That one had a lot of doodles in it, and that was, again, and it happened with a few songs that I wrote when I was starting out as well, but that song was written as a kind of joke to a friend of mine, because we used to have to suffer on the megabus from York to the East Midlands Parkway, and then get on a weird rickety old train from East Midlands Parkway to London Euston or King's Cross, and it was the shittest journey, and it was like the £3 journey for us to go see our friends in London. And the East Midlands Parkway is one of the ugliest places I've ever been to in my life. It's just these like 4 cooling towers in the middle of nowhere, and it's one of the places where like everything is just stopped. Everything is frozen in time, and the same lady works at the sandwich bar there, and just like is constantly miserable about the same thing. And the coffee is the same coffee as the coffee it was 6 years ago, and they've never changed anything in there. It's just this place completely stuck in time. And so it was a bit of a joke to include it as this, I don't know, purgatory in this song, and then it took on a bit more meaning, because it goes into the story of the car being stuck, and and then I went back and then found out that the road that goes from the East Midlands Parkway to Nottingham is called Remembrance Way or Remembrance Road, and I was like, fuck man, that's written itself.
So you don't like something about the fact that it's stuck in time as well, though? Those kind of places in the world that feel like they're kind of on the edge of reality.
I absolutely love it, which is like why I had to be included in a song. Yeah, it sounds like I'm being really derogatory of East Midlands Parkway, and I love its ugliness. I adore it. The sort of industrial, super smoky, really polluted part of the world, which is this sort of like the hinge between the north and the south. I think it's an amazing place, and you would there's nowhere else like it on the planet. It's just like it's a purgatory for megabus tourists. It's fascinating. It's like the sort of people get lost on the Greyhound bus in America, and people get lost at the East Midlands Parkway. In the same way, it's our version of that Route 66 in a way, and I find that fascinating. So yeah, more songs need to be written about the Midlands, I think.
Do you find there are other places like that in your life, like other places in Essex that have taken on a similar kind of shape where they just don't change?
My hometown, yeah, I'm from Colchester, which is one of these really. So I keep moving between really old cities. So there's Colchester, which is Britain's oldest recorded town. It's like the Romans were there, and Boudicca knocked about for a bit, and I think
near the sea.
Not too far from the sea.
Okay.
Yeah. Apparently Humpty Dumpty was written in and about a place in Colchester. So there's that. It's super old and it's cool, but it's like one of those places where the old bits are always going to stay there, the castle and the Roman walls and stuff like that. And everything else is weirdly also stuck in its own way. Like the only real things that change are the phone shops and the hairdressers. But otherwise, it's one of those places that does seem to be a little bit stuck in time. It's a strange place. And then for some reason, I decided to move to York, where once again, it's got such history. And then, but then I guess the sort of size of the town means it's stuck in this odd time loop. But again, I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. I do love it. And I think it's so quintessentially British to be stuck in this weird version of its own past. It's like, it's in this strange time loop that it'll never get out of. And I think there's something beautiful about that. I think that's sort of Britain's problem and its essence in one go.
Still holding on to the empire.
Oh man, I've been writing about that a lot actually. I think there's
Have you actually?
Yeah. I find it fascinating, people's obsession with the empire, because it's inspiring a lot of people's political motivations and political inspiration at the moment, especially with Brexit and things like that. People are still holding on to this idea that Britain, what even used to be great, and it's just so fascinating to see. Because have you heard about the Crystal Palace, the original Crystal Palace?
No.
been doing a bit of research into this. Let's see if I've got it on my computer. I wrote something down about it because I just got, again, probably just a bit drunk and bored one day, but started to research the Crystal Palace because I didn't know too much about it. But so yeah, the Crystal Palace was like this massive, amazing structure built. It basically showed, it was called in 1851, there was a great exhibition at the Crystal Palace, which essentially showed off Britain's empiric values. It had all of these marvels from around the empire, and they were all brought to the palace. They were like animals. There was a zoo. There was artworks. There was inventions. There were like all of these things, and like hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people came to see it. And it was this bonkers place, super popular. And then in 1936, it set on fire. Apparently there was like an explosion inside, and then it set on fire, and all of this stuff inside it got lost and started to set ablaze. And apparently Winston Churchill watched it burn down. About 100,000 people apparently came to Sydenham Hill, and they called it like the end of an age, because you just saw this empire. Well, not even an empire. This sort of everything that could symbolise an empire that was kept in this strange glass building in London was being set on fire before their eyes. But by 1936, the majority of it had disappeared anyway. You know, Britain had like lost hold of its grasp on so many of the populations that it previously.
Was India gone by that point?
Not sure. I know that Churchill had committed some serious war crimes over there and let about 2 million people starve after the famines, but yeah, I'm not sure on the exact dates of Indian independence, but I find that so, like, you know, it's something that I'm only beginning to research and realise the importance of, especially when considering British right's version of their own history and, you know, our own greatness. It's something I'm very interested in, and I think it's very apparent within a conservative mindset.
Once Queenie goes,
oh, she's really holding on for dear life, isn't she? How long do lizards live for? Because I don't know what, you know, tortoises are, but they live for like 150 years, and she's got something like that in her.
Yeah, she is a bit of a Komodo dragon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, she must have like a shell or something, you know, that's like rebounding bullets. Because the amount of people that must have tried to kill the Queen is ridiculous. Like, what's she made of? Sort of fiberglass.
I do think, like what we were saying there, though, she is this thing that is still connected to the Empire. Because she was around when it was around, and she's this like tangible connection we have to it.
Yeah.
And once that goes, it gets easier. It's like with wars as well. Once everyone who was directly involved with like World War I or II is gone, it becomes a lot more distant a memory than it was, say, 30 years ago or so.
Exactly, much hazier. Yeah, definitely. I think it's going to be an interesting few years, because what does Charles stand for? He's just a weird joke. He's like this really just this strange-looking guy who's just sort of the son of the Queen. That's why I think I don't know. I mean,
he's definitely the monarch for our times, though. When you look at Trump and Johnson, Charles fits right in as the kind of monarch equivalent of that.
No, you're totally right. And he looks really silly as well. I just can't imagine him on money. Can you imagine him? Like, can you imagine holding a coin and it's got Charles's head on it? Oh no.
He kind of looks like a caricature.
Yeah, he does. He does. What happens with this? This is just me being dumb, but what happens with all the money with the Queen on it? Because surely there's loads of that. Does it just get smelted? Just sort of like turned into Charles's face, and all the notes and stuff like that? We have to give them back?
I presume so, but I mean, I don't know how many times would this actually have happened, because she's been in since the 50s. Yeah.
Yeah, Jesus. Well, I guess I'm sure. I hope someone's thinking of it, because if not, we've really cracked a case here. If not, we should spread a panic. Because what happens to all our money, and why do I have to have Charles's face in my pocket?
Well, money will be gone by the time she's gone.
Money will be gone. Yeah, exactly.
It will. It'll be all digital and
NFTs. Yeah,
on your phone.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
That's what you should get involved with a colouring book. Howl the Hum NFT colouring book.
That's a good idea. Or we could just start exchanging colouring books as its own currency, because at some point they'll just become so precious to, you know, the onward thought of both empire and human progress that we might as well just use colouring books as a currency. Genius.
Do you see a certain Britishness or an Englishness in your songwriting sometimes? Again,
I have done, because only recently. I don't think there is on the first album, really. There's a couple of little mentions and things like that, but yeah, I don't know if I really hear a particularly British band in the way that there was in the 90s, and everyone was vying and fighting for it. Blur and Oasis, especially when you see the pictures of Blur with like the bulldog and they had this like they really wanted to be that again, that sort of like empirical version of British.
They were also taking the piss, though.
They were, exactly. But there's something I find really funny about that, and something that I do kind of relate to, because, well, Blur are also from my hometown. There's something very close to my heart about Blur and their version of Britishness, and Oasis's version of Britishness as well. And the way that those worlds collide, to me, is almost big melting pot of what it means to be British at the moment. But also there's so many other different versions, and something so melancholic about people, realising that there is an end to an empire and looking back and feeling nostalgic for something that they weren't necessarily part of. So I guess there's moments of that on the album. There's definitely, nostalgia for things that happened, but I don't know if we've spread enough to a wider sort of patriotic vibe yet, but I think there's still time, Who knows? Also, my heritage is Welsh, which I'm very proud of a lot of the time, and there's definitely a musical element of that in our songs. Whether or not it's particularly evident, I'm not sure. But
what do you mean by that?
Well, there's such a musical tradition in Wales that it was very much hereditary. It was very much passed down. Like when I go see my Welsh family, there's always songs being sung. Like you can't get 3 Welsh people in a car and not sing Tom Jones, as far as I know. Like it literally has to happen. And because Wales is so small, it's so strange. Like everyone has a musical connection in that country, but there's only 3 million people in the country, which I find bonkers. But you get some of the greatest singers. Like I've got tickets right next to me on my desk right now to go see Tom Jones at the Brudenell at the end of August, which is going to be bonkers. And then my dad was telling me the other day, my cousin's first boyfriend used to manage the Stereophonics. It's like, what the fuck's going on? Also, another claim to fame, my uncle's brother won a radio competition to be the worst singer in Wales. He won it. So my musical genealogy is really speaking for itself at the moment.
I'm just trying to imagine how bad the worst singer in Wales sounds.
You don't want to know.
Didn't you grow up in Scotland as well, though?
Yeah, I lived in Dumfries for a while. I'm from all over, man. Jet-setting lifestyle from the age of 4.
How long were you up here for?
4 years or something, I think. Or maybe I was 3 when I moved over. I can't remember. But yeah, we were over there for a few years because my dad worked up there. And yeah, so Scotland holds a very dear place in my heart, which is why we always come back to the Highlands as well. And I try and make a trip to Dumfries. But I've got a lot of friends in Glasgow and Scotland, and now on Orkney as well, of course. One of my favourite places on the planet.
Do you have any memories from when you were here the first time? When you were age 4 to 8?
Yeah, well, the Robbie Burns Museum and the Camera Obscura. Very fun.
In Edinburgh?
In Dumfries. I think it's in Dumfries.
There's one in Dumfries as well?
Yeah, I think so. I have very firm memories of me putting my hand on the ball thinness in the middle and watching the cars roll over it and thinking that I had humans in my veins. And yeah, the Robbie Burns Museum, and my teacher really not liking me at Lorrynow Primary School for being English, which, you know what, fair enough. I don't like the English either, and I am it.
It's that is also kind of tapping into a similar thing. You know, what we were saying about England being very much tied to this empire. Scotland almost goes even further back in the sense that we can't seem to escape this idea that we're like trampled on almost.
Absolutely. I think there's maybe a possible camaraderie with the Welsh there as well, because I think Wales almost think the same thing as themselves. But yeah, it's these like old ideas of greatness is so strange to us, because I also think there's some sections of the English who are quite, what's the word? Well, don't particularly like their Englishness. I know me and a lot of friends have like severe sort of phobia of certain elements of Englishness and a real dislike of certain parts that we're come to be associated with, those stag do's and hen do's that make themselves particularly present at airports. And, we've never been proud of the Brexit vote and things like that. But but then we have to hold on to the things that we are proud of, and things like football can bring us closer together, which is always nice. Sometimes the rugby, but then again, sometimes those things push us even further apart. So I'm not really sure. What
else are you proud of when it comes to your Englishness?
Music. Big fan of a lot of the music. A big fan of the NHS. I think that's great. Let me. I mean, there's more than that. Obviously, there's some great thinkers, and big fan of Tony Benn. Big fan of Liverpool Football Club in all its glory.
Poor show.
I'm so sorry. I'm really digging myself into a hole here. I think I'm getting myself hated from all angles. The UK in general, the UK's music, it's probably finest export of the last however many thousand years it's existed.
Which they don't put it like that, though, do they?
Yeah, that's a good point. But it's strange that I really have to think about what makes me proud to be English. But there's a wider bracket to be proud of being British, I think.
There's a sense of community, I think, that maybe a lot of other countries don't seem to have.
I definitely hope so. I think it's strange us talking from like a sort of artistic viewpoint, I guess, because like our friends will all be artists and, you know, involved in various art scenes in various cities, and there is a much more sort of communal togetherness feeling in those communities. So I'd like to believe that, you know, goes a little wider than just those communities. And I can pray that that's the case, even if it's not.
Have you been writing a lot over the last year?
I didn't last year. And then this year, things have turned around a lot, which has been so much better. It was like lots of reasons, like last year was no fun for anyone, and we had the tour cancelled, and we got in the album, we couldn't tour. We still haven't toured the album, and that's just such a strange feeling. So there was no ultimate desire to really make anything new at that point, because I was like, well, I've spent the last however many years writing this album, like, do I really have to follow it up straight away? But then this year I've sort of taken it into my stride a little bit more. The end of last year I started doing a lot of co-writes with friends on Zoom, which then made me realise how much I enjoy writing, that I enjoy creating. And then as a result of that, started utilising some of those co-writes and writing for the Howl and the Hum, and they've been going better than I sort of thought they could have done. And then as a result, we're starting to focus in on certain themes, like some of the ones that we've been talking today and some other ones. And at the moment, hitting a very broad trajectory in terms of what I want to be writing about. But it's just nice to be back into a routine of writing again, you know, of being able to sit down and have a plethora of ideas to start on, and whether those be musical or lyrical. And it's so pleasant to be able to feel like that tap has water in it again, you know.
With what you were saying there as well about how you're touching on quite a broad kind of range of themes, do you find when you're looking back at songs that you've written that the narrative or the kind of sonic threads tend to stand out to you first?
That's a good question. It honestly depends what mood I'm in, because I think I get quite bipolar about this. I have either I'm in the mindset that lyrics are the most important thing that's ever happened, or I'm of the mindset that music is the most important thing that's ever happened. And I'm very black and white about it. And at the moment, it's lyrics, but talk to me in 3 days and it'll be the music again. It's like it's the complete. I understand from an external perspective, when I'm not thinking too black and white, that it is the marriage of those two things that will make something great. But it really depends which side of the line I am on that particular day, and you just sort of have to embrace it. You know, you can go, if you're in a particularly good mindset in terms of lyrics, then go down that route, and then the music usually comes, and vice versa as well, which is great. And I think that's a good feeling, but I think you have to acknowledge which side of that line you are, you know, to fully embrace it, to fully embrace the creative feeling there. But it's difficult. It's difficult because it doesn't always work either. And sometimes, you know, your brain feels like it's working against you. But if you can embrace it and sometimes take some space away, then it's easy to reapproach it, you know.
But then when you look back on stuff, can you sometimes feel a little bit disassociated with it? Like if you've created something when you were very much in that space where you thought that music was the most important thing, when you look back on it, when you're in the space where lyrics are the most important thing, how does that kind of balance itself out for you?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. It's very difficult to, well, I mean, I find it quite difficult to go back to listen to it anyway, to go back and listen to these songs. I guess a lot of the time, the only time I'm reapproaching them is when I'm having to either learn the lyrics for a set or playing them on stage again. And I'd like to think that the songs do advance in some way, like there is always a new performance of these songs every time that we play them. So there isn't necessarily a set formula to the way we play a particular song, but obviously the chords and the lyrics will stay the same. But you know, sometimes there is a bit of movement. There's room for movement within the way a song can be performed. If that is if reapproaching a song is just about performance. But if you're going back to things like re-listening to the music that you made once and trying to appraise it from a musical or a lyrical direction, again, it really depends on the day of the week, because some days I'm like, man, I'm so fucking glad I came up with that. And some days I'm like, I need to fake my own death. And I hope no one ever finds me, because that's the worst lyric I've ever fucking heard. Why am I 5 years old? But yeah, it depends on the day of the week and how forgiving I'm being of myself. And it also depends, I think, on what my output is at the time. If I'm writing a lot and I'm really proud of the stuff that I'm writing, then I'm like, fuck the old stuff, I'm starting a new band, I'm changing my name, and I'm moving to Morocco, and everyone in Morocco will love it. And if I'm not writing particularly well at the time, I'm like, how did I come up with that lyric? And how am I ever going to get there again? Actually, I'm never going to get there again. I'm going to call it quits now and move to Morocco. Either way, I'm going to Morocco.
What about Fiji?
Fiji's on the list as well.
How did you cope last year if you weren't writing, when that kind of catharsis that you get from it is missing from your life for such a sustained period of time?
Pizza. I ate lots and lots of pizza, and I drank a lot of beer. It was miserable. No, well, I did write, and there are songs from that year, and some of them will at some point, I think, be released, because I think it's one of those things where if I look back on that entire time, I'm like, it was a throwaway year, it was miserable, it was depressing, and I got nothing out of it. However, if I go month by month and actually think about what I did, actually, you know what, there's a couple of decent songs in there. It was miserable, and I didn't write as much as I am now, but there are still some little seeds of things that are feeding into things that are being written now, and so it wasn't all doom and gloom. But yeah, a lot of pizza.
Any particular kind?
Just large. Just large pizzas. Yeah, and that's what I used to get through 2020. But no, there were lots of. It's weird because when you look back at that year, it's like you can think lots of things happened, but really, I swear, I just watched like The Simpsons seasons 3 to 9 about 8 times, and watched The Sopranos, and probably spent about $8,000 on Deliveroo.
To be fair, The Simpsons and pizza.
I mean, it's literally my favourite way to spend any time of day, but it doesn't mean that I should do that 5 days a week. So I'm really glad that music has now taken its place again, and I can stop funding my local pizza parlour's children's university tuition fees.
It's interesting as well, you know, that now that you're kind of back into the swing of writing and it's progressing again, because for us, or for me at least, my impression of where the Howl the Hum sound is very much frozen in time at this period last year when you dropped the record. Where is it for you now? How far away are you at this point from where the album was at?
Yeah, I mean, we're not into like Swedish language prog metal with like jazz infusions and things like that. We're not that far, don't worry. But there's definite progression. There's an acknowledgement of where the album was musically. And then in a couple of weeks, we're going back into the studio to record a new song with Jolyon again, with the same producer. So there are all these elements that are still going to be the same. But for us, the heart and soul of everything is the song. Everything around that can change, which to us is, really exciting. It means that we can change the sound and we can evolve everything as a result of that. But it's difficult. It's difficult for me to take a step away and go like, this is what the song sounds like. This is everything that's happening musically with it at the moment. Because for me, I'm playing an acoustic guitar and I'm writing words and melodies. But Connor, at the same time as doing all this magic graphic design stuff, is being a little wizard with the production and learning all these new music softwares. And so there's elements of these like James Blakey things that I think were sort of a little present on the album. There's like little moments of production and electronic elements, but I don't know if we necessarily knew what we were doing. And this time around, I feel like we know what we're doing a little more. that's vaguely what I'll say, because we also haven't had any finished versions of these songs back yet. So who knows? It could be a Swedish language metal prog jazz infused techno album. So watch this space.
I think although you're saying you have a slightly better idea of what you're doing, the good thing about Connor as well, picking at that production, is it might help to keep some of the naivety and like the freshness that comes from that in it by learning that new skill.
Exactly. Part of me hopes that he always like retains that childish fascination, and he does do that, because that's Connor's genius. I'm not just like tooting Connor's trumpet, though I'm sure he'd love that, but his sort of approach to things is to become so obsessed with them that he'll stay up till like 4 a.m. doing them, but never, now this is going to sound kind of rude, but never master it, but always sort of like spread yourself so that you can find all these new avenues, and always just be a little bit of a beginner at everything, rather, which I think is, it keeps that childish fascination, and it means that you can still, because I think making mistakes is the best way to make the most interesting things. If you're making mistakes and if you're pushing yourself to things that you don't fully understand, you're always going to make something slightly more interesting than constantly burrowing through the things that you're most familiar with, you know?
Yeah. I mean, following on from what you were saying there, you were talking about Blur earlier on as well, or we mentioned them briefly. Damon Albarn, I know, has never learned the guitar past a basic level. He's always just kept it at that level, so he always has something he can go back to when he needs that slightly, like you say, childish spark to kind of re-energize things and kickstart things again.
I think that's the most exciting thing about it. And I've always been so jealous of people that never got a formal education in guitar, because it's like a lot of the people that I know that never had a lesson are way better guitarists than the people that did, that know what like an augmented fourth is and things like that. There's one of my favourite bands in the world is a band called Dingus Khan from Manningtree in Essex. I just remember standing outside a smoking area once, and Ben, the singer, was playing some chords on the guitar, and I was like, oh, is that like a G7? And he was like, oh, I have no idea, it just makes this sound. And then he just played it, and I was like, oh, that's so much cooler than the way I think about music. And I've always been so jealous of the way that he's aiming for sound rather than necessarily knowing how he got there, and I think that's just the most exciting thing. You know, it's like a kid like smashing their hands on a piano, and they're just doing it because it's fun and it sounds good, and it's like, if you lose that love of music, then there's no point otherwise, is there?
I mean, speaking of, didn't Jolyon play Korn in the studio for you, which is kind of feeding into that idea?
Yeah, he did do that. Yeah, no comment.
You're not a fan?
I think they're great. I think Korn are great. I don't know how much influence they're going to have on our future recordings. I think the energy is there, though. Like, I understand why they're so big, and I get that they're nutters, and I think that's really exciting.
Was that what you tapped into when he played it for you, though? That energy? Was that what you kind of took from it and the reason he was giving it to you? I
think a lot of that was us getting to know Jolyon and Jolyon getting to know us, because the way I just reacted there to listen to Korn is like, it's not true. I fucking love Korn. One of my favourite albums ever is like, well, Toxicity, System of a Down, and I listen to that when I run and when I do exercise. And that new metal vibe is like so deeply a part of who me and Jack, our drummer, like is, however that sentence structure works. But there's something so true about the anger in the message of that music and the way that they translated that I think fascinates Jolyon and us, and I love that. And then, obviously, we don't have that sort of distortion on the album, but we can appreciate the sort of emotional message of getting from a Korn guitar sound and going, yeah, and the emotion that can conjure up to, like, you know, having a keyboard sound on Pigs, using the Rhodes piano on like the outro to the album. So it might.
I wasn't expecting you to go for Pigs there.
Yeah, I don't know why I did, really. It's been a long day.
No, but that's like an interesting connection to make. It's like going from the kind of anger of Korn to the gentleness of Pigs.
Well, exactly. It's like, I think you've got to use those maximized emotions to be able to portray something in music. It's like there's always room for subtlety, but there's also room for going over the top and trying to portray a message. And Korn do that, and hopefully we did that all right as well. Love that we've mentioned Korn. We've been talking about Korn for the last 5 minutes as well. Jolyon's going to love this.
That kind of childish nature that we were talking about a few moments ago, just before we got into the Korn tangent, where you said that Connor kind of finds that with this idea that he keeps pushing himself into new areas. Where have you found that lately? That kind of naivety?
No, that's a good question. So I guess in terms of themes in terms of what I've been writing about and collecting. So the last couple of days since playing the gig, I've been sort of taking a step back from thinking about performing and starting to get back into a writing frame of mind. So doing quite a lot of reading and writing about certain things. And as soon as you find yourself broaching certain themes that you've never really thought about, that you've never really challenged before, you get into a territory where you don't really know what you're talking about, which is, I think, some of the most exciting places to start writing creatively from, because this is exactly what I was talking about at the start. You don't know the answer to the questions you're asking, and that's sort of, it gets that naivety along because you don't know where you're going with a particular idea. That's sort of the best place to start. Again, probably why I talk about cars and roads and journeys so much, is because you don't necessarily know where you're going, and I think there's such a romantic notion about that, not necessarily having an end in sight, being that sort of like, in the David Lynch films, there's always the shot of like of the line, the yellow line on an American highway, just going somewhere. We don't really know where it's going. There's something super romantic and fascinating about that. So it's nice. And there's that David Bowie quote, which is always like, you need to push yourself to the furthest extremes. Go past your comfort level. Go out of your comfort zone. And that's how you make the most interesting music. And I think we can do that thematically. And I think when we come to producing and arranging the songs, we can do that from a sonic standpoint as well. That for us is just what is going to interest us, you know? That's what's going to make us most excited about releasing new music.